Did you know that your journey to better and less severe autism outcomes and gains will rely on who you hang out with? It's actually a known fact, and lots of studies has shown that we are the average of the 5 people we surround ourselves with. This means that if you don't surround yourself with families succeeding at health and lifestyle, at a lifestyle path for their kids, you have a greater chance of reverting to old harmful habits and choosing caving to harmful foods that you know are hurting your child's brain development and ability to succeed in the future. It also means that you are teaching your child habits that they're going to pass down for generations to come. And so it repeats not just a genetic cycle, but also an environmental cycle. So hi, I'm Natalie Pelto. I am the co-founder and owner at Blue Life RX, a wellness initiative focused on lifestyle medicine for adults and kids to thrive. Make sure to like and subscribe to get notified of our new free content. I personally, my expertise is in child brain development with a focus on autism and ADHD. As a mom who used to have a child being pushed for a severe nonverbal diagnosis every single time I went to my pediatrician's office, I honestly felt the most disempowered. I was told to focus on therapy and that was really my only option. I was offered OT and speech, and my son was not making any gains. If anything, I was leaving each appointment extremely frustrated, trying to implement exactly what they were teaching me into my home and getting the same results that they were, meaning I wasn't really getting any results. I tried to repeat these processes, like I said, and I also tried to bring him consistently to socialize him in playgroups every single chance I got. And honestly, it only left me feeling really defeated and shameful because he didn't interact with anyone, or even he was so severe. He didn't even acknowledge that he didn't even acknowledge that kids were around him, even adults. For me, each day felt like a failure, and it felt a little bit like a mallet chipping away at my heart. And I'm sure that if you have a nonverbal child fighting this type of diagnosis, I get you. It is absolutely heartbreaking, and the guilt that comes along with that is absolutely astronomical. But it wasn't until I found stories of recovery among blogs on the internet, this was like decades ago, and good old Instagram didn't exist, that I realized there was another option. And for most families who feel that lifestyle is kind of a far reach, or they've been told by so many different experts, and it's not to say like there's as many experts now sharing that lifestyle is just as important as therapies, as there are saying that food doesn't matter or change anything at all. So just choose your experts wisely. But I had already begun. The reason this was really impactful to me and it made sense to me is that I had already begun my own personal journey with lifestyle. I owned a juicer. It wasn't collecting dust. I was fermenting my own ketchup. I was doing all these things. And actually, it was harder for me because I was cooking for 3 different people every single day. Not only that, I had been in healthcare at this time for about 12 years, and I had had some exposure to the more holistic side of things just within the last few. And so I already understood that it was on my radar that illnesses like diabetes and metabolic syndrome could see so much better outcomes. The link between nutrition and conditions and illnesses and syndromes had already kind of clicked for me. It just hadn't clicked for autism yet. But then when I found all these wonderful blogs, it was like a light bulb literally it blew up on top of my head. I was honestly so excited that I had discovered by what I had discovered that I started to share it immediately with my family. And the truth was, I was shocked when they weren't as excited as I was. And actually, some of them were downright against it. It was really, really hard. I leave some of these family events or coffee dates or wine dates, and honestly, I was really defeated and I was frustrated. It was my first experience at being surrounded with people who did not support my goals, and it made the change I was trying to do in my home that much harder. But I knew I could do this. And to the outside world after that, it kind of looked like I became a hermit. And this was like the furthest thing from the truth. Some people think I separated myself, and a lot of families have shared the same story with me, is that their family felt like they kind of just cocooned in their home. But this is actually not what was happening at all. What really happened was that I did walk away from those that were not supportive to my goals and kept those interactions to a minimum, even though some of these were family members and close family members, and I didn't want to break those relationships. I still minimized contact as I was building these habits and these really important changes within our lifestyle. And I immersed myself, though, in stories and research and people who were consistently successful in the health and healing journey that I was on. Even if it meant, reading blogs and not being in exactly the same social media settings that we have now and access to. I have a huge presence on Instagram. And so I can see the difference, and the ability to connect is so much easier. But I had started this understanding of the people that I was interacting with were impacting my results. If I, for example, went into a Facebook group, I knew that I wasn't going to be getting anything positive. That's just where we were at today. And honestly, this is what made all the difference. I was surrounded by people and seeing and living the success. And this meant that my own journey to the success that I wanted was that much quicker and happened that much more. So if you've been avoiding a lifestyle shift because you feel unsupported, let's just say your husband, your wife, grandparents are not on board to the point where you almost feel like efforts are wasted. Trust me, at 50% of the time, even in split families, that families are separated and the parent is getting 50% custody, you are still, 50% of the time is better than 0% of the time. And again, it's better than none. So we have families in the Blue Life Autism program who work, who are divorced, who are separated, and they still put in the effort and they can still be quite successful in this journey. And I want to share something about that. For most family members and people who you're interacting with that may have been more resistant at the beginning, when a child begins to change before their eyes, especially to the differences of what we saw from a child who was completely non-capable of any type of interactions, did not look up to his own name, was unable to make eye contact, it doesn't take long for family members to really dive and become on board with your process. And we are society-driven creatures. We want our kids to thrive, and we understand that it takes a village to help a child thrive. So I realized very quickly that my family members that were very against this, and in many cases this was grandma, well, not grandma, but grandpa so much, I realized that these extended family members were not against what I was doing, even though I perceived it that way. And honestly, to the outside world or to anyone looking in, it looked that way, but they were just being challenged with change. And change is uncomfortable, even especially when we haven't made the decision to be part of it. But as the famous quote says, if nothing changes, nothing changes, and we want change and success for our kids. So here are 3 tips to help you shift your environment and become more successful in your journey. Tip number 1 is you want to remove yourself from online environments and limit in-person interactions where people are not winning and where your winning will trigger them. So AKA, also known as Facebook groups or family gatherings that aren't shaming families who want their children to have health and vitality. I don't know how many times after the multiple certifications that I received in nutrition, like actual, my health background, all of these things never mattered to most Facebook groups when I tried to offer a lifestyle intervention to someone's problem. And all that happened in those messages was shame towards myself not accepting my child. For who he was. And the truth was, is I did accept my child for who he was, but I knew he was so much more. And so I fought to give him the best of what I could give him. And it made all the difference. Tip number 2 is to intentionally engage with families who are successful in person and offline. Go to the events. In other words, attend the events where you can connect with families on the same path that you are. Many of the parents you're going to meet here, they're going to either be ahead of your progress or behind your progress, which is why we talk about see what it means to be the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with, and why those relationships are the number 1 thing that you should prioritize if you want to have better outcomes for your child on the spectrum. The other thing is tip number 3 that is so important that I feel is the disconnect and the resistance between family members is that acknowledging our family members concerns. Acknowledge them. Say, I understand that this is change and that you may think that this isn't helpful, but it is. And I don't recommend bringing them the data unless they're very data driven. This is what I want you to understand about these relationships. And having worked with hundreds of families, it doesn't change. So understand that when they are doing the or putting in this resistance is that they want to create relationships with your children. They want to spoil your child and bring them for ice cream because it allows them to bring them joy. And even though that ice cream is super unhealthy, they don't realize that it's poison. But the point, but the point is, if we can, what we can do, tip number 3, is to give them options. Give your family members options to connect with your kids in a different way. So remember, grandparents, they're not like in the ice cream scenario. It isn't about them knowing that they're, poisoning your kids or giving them the data. It's about offering to them a positive way for them to build these connections with our kids, which is all they want. So this could look like changing, using the pleasure points of food and using food as a pleasure and reward, and starting to use connection through actions or going to the park, a woodland walk, or even a trip to the dollar store. When families experience these options, there is way less backlash and resistance. So if you found these 3 tips useful, and I highly recommend diving into my 3 secrets to reclaiming lost milestones in autism. It's down below in the description, and join the Blue Life Autism program where we normalize children on the spectrum becoming verbal and independent while living the life of their dreams. Don't forget to like and follow.